Welcome to the Diasporadicals podcast.
This is not enough.
We're African millennials getting together to discuss our lives and experiences as expats living in the UK.
What's your name?
I am Norma Jean, formerly known as Billie Jean, and I'm still not your average.
What's just your name?
Hey listeners, I am Ria, your resident ranting queen. Also random Ria now. Guess what? I still have a lot to complain about. Welcome to the Diasporadicals podcast.
Hello listeners, welcome back to another episode of the Diasporadicals podcast. This week we're keeping it kinda light and fun. There's a lot going on in the world. Wouldn't you agree, Ria?
Too much is going on.
Yeah. All I'm going to say is fingers crossed for the Americans. Because, you're about to embark on an interesting 4-year journey. Whatever happens, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, respect to the Americans, good luck. But you know what? Solidarity with our Nigerian brothers and sisters.
Yeah, solidarity with our Nigerian brothers and sisters. We are hoping you guys get what you need out of this and hoping that, it's not just like a temporary Band-Aid fix. It's actually more permanent change towards, having a police system that makes more sense. If there's any such thing as a police system that makes sense in today's world.
Amen to that.
Anywho, so we're going to keep it light. So make sure if you don't know what's going on in Nigeria, look up NSARS. In the US, I don't know how you would not know what's going on in the US. But if you don't know, good for you, because it's shit. And if you know what's going on in the UK, where they've decided not to feed hungry kids, I don't know what to say. Good for you
Lord.
that you don't know what's going on, because
if you don't know any of this, then I don't want to say sheltered.
Yeah, you're sheltered. Good for you. I wish I was under some shelter right now, because this is a lot. Anywho, we're going to keep it light. Like, this episode is going to be about something fun. And here's the thing, it's going to be full of spoilers. So if you haven't watched the show that we're about to talk about, the first thing you need to do is go watch it. The second thing you need to do is come back and listen to this
pause
episode.
And then come back.
You've been warned. Okay, so let's tell you about what we'll be talking about. So, Africans or black people in general have an interesting relationship with juju. I think ever since the white man came to Africa and did what he did, we've had a weird relationship with juju in the sense that most people believe in it to some extent, but at the same time there's the other side of the whole religious thing, that especially Christianity in particular, which is very anti-African religions or African systems of spirituality.
Basically any other type of spirituality.
Pretty much any other, but I think in Africa we were specifically taught that it is evil and it's bad. And so Africans have this weird aversion to anything spiritual that is outside of Christianity. I feel like Muslim states are I guess less ferocious about it. Are they?
Actually, probably more ferocious about it.
Really? So does Islam teach also that like African things and
not necessarily African, because Islam is mainly founded around like the Middle East, and prior to the coming of Islam, people had their own, let's say, religious traditions. They do have their own version of juju. And worshipping statues, and they're called false gods.
Yep, exactly.
So Islam is very brutal against anything like that. There is only one God.
So something I find interesting is that I do think Africans believe in juju, but what I think is interesting on the other side is that they deny, or they just don't want people to practice. There's a denialism happening. At the same time, there's a belief in it. There's some people who, like, when it comes down to it and they find no other way around something, they're going to go to juju. You remember those guys who used to be at stations and stuff and give you these little leaflets?
Yeah.
With, like, all these things that you could be cured. Hilarious that literally the same ones you'd find printed in Africa, you find here in the UK with exactly the same grammatical errors.
Trust me.
Gosh.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, really funny. But anywho, so speaking of juju, there's this amazing show that was on HBO, that just ended on HBO, that hopefully you can catch up and watch. It's called Lovecraft Country. I think it's based on some books, based on some other horror writers' things, who I think was a bit of a racist or something like that. But so Lovecraft Country is an interesting show following a bunch of protagonists in Jim Crow era in the US. I would say definitely watch it. If you haven't, come back and tweet us and tell us what you think about it. But we're going to talk about it in this episode, this whole episode. So if you haven't watched it, it's full of spoilers. And here's the thing about Lovecraft Country. It's full of juju. It's full of witchcraft juju. It's full of
everything,
It's full of horror, sci-fi, romance. It's got a little bit of everything for everybody. So if you're a nerd and you really like sci-fi, I highly recommend it. If you like horror, it's good. I know a lot of African Black people in general don't like horror because, well, our lives are a bit of a horror.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need to imagine, hey?
So we tend to be like averse to anything, you know, like I said before about witchcraft and juju. But at the same time, the horror side is like, you don't want to see that. Life is already full of horrors. But I would say it's a great show. Give it a shot. I mean, it's got lots of issues, but I feel like for the genre or subgenre, it is very good. It's got a really amazing cast. I highly recommend it. So we're going to talk about it. All right, cool. Yes, I mean, this is one of my favorite words anyway. So cool. So we're going to go through like the episodes, try to go in order. We might mess up. And there's a lot of interesting things. You might be wondering why, what does this have to do with Diasporadicals, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of interesting things that happen in this show that are very relatable to Black people everywhere. And obviously it's based in the US. And so there's a lot of historical stuff, real history that's embedded in the show. But I think as Black people, there's so many moments there where you're just like, and they tackle a lot of things around race. So it's really interesting. So let's start from the beginning. So the show opens in a really fantastical kind of scene. It's like this batshit crazy sci-fi horror scene. There's flying octopuses. There's an alien invasion. There's a bloody Asian woman. I don't mean that in a bad way. Like there's a literal Asian woman who's covered in blood. Yeah, she's covered in blood. And there's someone with a bat, like, you know, a bat that she used to hit things with. And it's pretty fantastical. So it starts with a bang. It starts with a literal bang, like highly engaging. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? Reminds you of a lot of sci-fi movies you've watched in the past. And I really loved it. I was just like, ooh, what is this? I want more. Is there going to be more of this? But, you know, it turns out that's kind of like a dream or something. So, yeah, whatever.
I remember when I first watched, you know, the first episode. First of all, you're the one who told me about it. And it was really like my mind was blown. I was just seeing so many things happening.
Yeah.
You know, like you're saying, bloody Asian woman, alien invasion, flying octopuses with Black people in the scenes. And I'm like, what? What's going on here? You know, so I actually paused it, took a second, and I was like, let me absorb this. Yeah. And then I came back to it. I'm like, okay, let's see what's happening.
Yeah, it was a lot going on, but it's such good fun. That first episode is like super action packed, and we're introduced to like the main characters like Tick, aka Atticus, Ruby, Hippolyta, Uncle George, who's the other one? Letty, what's her family in real life? Like the actress. The Smollets. So she's one of the Smollets. I'm a big fan of the Smollets. They had that show when they were kids. What was that show called? Where they were like orphans or something like that. Or they had...
Did they?
Yeah. This is how they got like all famous as a family. And also their story as a family, you know, like... But anyway, I remember watching them as a kid and really liking... I really, really liked Journey. Oh, she's such a cutie pie. I really felt like I connected with her as a kid, and I've always been a bit of a fan.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see her in this show. I mean, we'll talk a bit about the dynamics of who gets to play who in this show, which is
very important.
Yeah, we find ourselves having this conversation yet again. But anyway, so I like something about the Uncle George. He's kind of doing this green book style guidebook for Black people.
Yeah.
You know, just like showing Black people where they can go, explore safely, stuff. So like tourism, just discovering stuff for Black people, which is really cool. And I really loved that they put that in the show. I think the head writer, her name is Misha Green, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, she's very engaged. I think she did Underground, which was cancelled at some point.
Oh, yes.
Journey,
yeah. I think she was in Underground, wasn't she?
Oh, was she? I mean, I didn't watch it, but it's one of those shows where I'm like, I definitely want to watch it.
You need to watch it.
Yeah, I definitely will. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're introduced to Letty and Ruby, which is a very interesting scene because you're like, these are sisters. Letty is if you watch the show, I hope you have if you're listening to this, Letty is clearly mixed race or multiracial, black, white. And her sister Ruby is voluptuous, dark-skinned black woman. She's played by Wunmi. She's a British actress, Wunmi something. She's fantastic. She's amazing. She's in another show that's coming
beautiful.
up. Another horror that's coming up on Netflix. She's so beautiful. I mean, like, every scene she came, I'd just be like, oh my god, this woman is so
just kept looking at her skin.
She is, woo, Wunmi Mosaku. Damn, girl. If you're listening to this, one of the most beautiful women in the world, because I'm just like, wow.
Where is that name from? Do you know?
I think she's Nigerian. Wunmi is a very Nigerian name. What a stunning woman. Yeah, she's British. And I think she's been in a lot of British shows. I think her career has been going on for over a decade. Amazing actress.
She really does. She got skills.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a fan. But anyway, they're sisters, and you're just like, wait, one is dark skinned and one is mixed race. What's happening here? Something happened. And you obviously know that, okay, there's going to be a storyline around this. Because if you're a black person, you're like, yo, we're the sisters.
I must say, hey, I have, sisters of also mixed heritage. Or, whatever. Yeah. And I've received that question myself. They look at both of us and they're like, really? Your sisters?
That is interesting. Yeah, but I mean, it's good to see that brought into a TV show. I will say, though, I'm kind of disappointed that, and here's the thing, like I said, I'm a big fan of Janice Smollett. I have no issues with her. I just feel like we made so much progress in television the past couple of years. We had How to Get Away with Murder. We had Scandal. We have all these shows. We've got amazing leading ladies who are chocolate or dark-skinned, whatever the case may be. It just feels like we're sliding back to having light skin or multiracial people as black, when it comes to the stars. Because look at the guy. Atticus is the star. Later on, they have like a love story, but I'm just like, okay, cool. Here we have a black man. But then, I mean, we know that he's phenotypically black, sure, but we know that obviously he has got some white blood in him. Later on revealed in the show. But it's just like, yet again, a dark-skinned man with a light-skinned or multiracial woman. Are we ever gonna get the storyline where it's not the case? It's interesting.
Yeah.
But here we are again. But anyway, they're sisters. So anyway, episode 1 is just centered around introducing these characters. And then Tick's dad, Atticus's dad, goes missing, and then they go looking for him, where a lot of weird sciencey, horror stuff kind of happens along the way. It's a really action-packed episode, and I really loved it. What did you think, Ria?
I really loved it as well, because Atticus's dad, he went missing because he went mainly looking for Atticus's mom's history, who's now passed, trying to get to the bottom of, her lineage and that sort of thing. And then he ends up going missing. So it's really about Atticus going on a mission to try and find his dad.
And he goes with a couple people.
Yeah, he picks some people.
His band of
merry people.
And then they end up at some weird mansion at the end of the episode, and then we are introduced to some white people and their juju in episode 2. So it's interesting because here we have, at this point, we've not heard anything about black juju, you know what I mean? Like, about black juju, but then we're first introduced to white juju. So, but yeah, I mean, in general, we don't talk about white juju. I know in the real world, there's always talk about, what do they call the Freemasons and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of word, the Illuminati, which is what people can think about when they think about white juju. But this is the first time we're introduced to that in the show, which is fun. This episode was weird. It was the first episode where I was like, I don't know if I want to keep watching this show. This is... But I did enjoy it in the end. So we're introduced to very blonde, very pale, very Aryan, very Hitler, really like this type of people in the show. In the form of Christina and William. And so they end up at this place where everybody keeps forgetting what happened, how they got there, and their adventures to getting there, except for Tick. And Tick is like, yo, motherfuckers can't remember what happened yesterday? Are you just for real? What the hell? So there's some weird shit happening there. Then there's some weird village where they go to. So Ria, do you have any thoughts about what happened in this episode?
Oh man, so I think it was just very creepy how, when they got to this Juju mansion.
We'll keep calling it Juju Mansion then.
So they got there. First of all, they were expecting them. Story is set in the 1950s, where black people don't go to any mansion except as cleaners or as maids. The fact that they're accepted into this mansion as welcomed guests and they're told to be treated, they said, oh, we're treating you like family. It was actually quite odd to me.
Yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yeah, that was the first odd thing I noticed. So they get there and they're being given everything, but one of the weird things, when they talked about the proprietor of the mansion, the lord or whatever, I don't know what you call them, the main owner.
Yeah, or the guy who died. I think built the place, right?
And you start to find out about the history. When they're talking about him, they're like, oh, this is someone who treated his employees really well.
He was known for treating them well.
And at that point, I was like, his employees. Okay. You mean slaves? Yes.
Treated well means what exactly? I mean, the first thing that came to my mind is rape, which it turns out that was actually the case. So that was very interesting. And then Tech discovers that he's actually part of this family. This is like part of his lineage. That whoever that guy is his ancestor somehow. So probably a result of him raping one of his slaves, aka employees that he treats well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then he encounters these guys, the white juju guys. I think, Ria, you said this is like one of your favorite parts in the show.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts in the show was, first of all, she discovers that these, and the reason we're calling them white juju guys is because it is made apparent that they're all part of some sort of juju-associated cult. And since he's a descendant of one of these guys who was probably a high priest in the cult, that gives him a high standing. So there's a scene where they're having dinner and it was so apparent how, they put the only two black men in the room on a separate table by themselves. And they're told, you know what? You might not feel welcome here, but you deserve to be here.
Yeah, you're here because of your part of the bloodline, but you're still other. Yeah,
so for me, I was impressed by that because he managed to do some quick math and said, hey, if this is this 1 + 1 = 2, that means I can boss you guys about. All of you guys, get up, go, leave.
Yep, told them bitches to get out of there. So it was just him left with the guy who played Olivia Pope's guy in Scandal. What's his name? That was him, right? He's the one who played the Fitz.
Oh, the president,
Yeah, Fitz. Yeah, Fitz is...
He was the current High Lord.
Yeah, and Fitz kind of gets roasted.
Literally.
At the end of the episode. And then there was a lot of people trying to escape. There's some with stuff with the order of whatever they're called, and then there's some shady wizardry shit happening, and then they try to escape, as in the black people try to escape, try to get out of there. So if you've watched it, you know that at this point people get shot, some people are resurrected with magic, and it's questionable who they decide to save and who they decide not to save. Which actually eventually comes back to bite them in the ass, right?
That's true.
Because if they had not resurrected Letty, a lot of the stuff in the future would have happened.
Hey, so exactly like you just said, there was even a resurrection in this episode.
Resurrection. So yeah, more juju, some serious juju, and then we get to episode 3, where Lady Letty, I almost called her something bad, but I'll keep it to myself.
Oh, what was that? Come on, say it.
It might have something to do with, it's just like alliteration, her name and her skin tone, but I'll leave it alone.
Okay.
She has the cojones to buy a house in a white neighborhood and try to be a pioneer and be like, yeah, pioneers have it hard, but pioneers are the ones who start the thing. I'm like, okay, girl, if you think it's a smart idea to buy this rickety big house which has some horrible history to it in the middle of a white neighborhood, then go on. She manages to buy it. I mean, we realize that there's a lot of shady stuff happening in terms of how she's able to afford to buy a house, considering she keeps asking her sister for money and her sister to help her out with stuff. So,
but then that's an important point, because it's important to note how she managed to buy this house.
Yes.
And it was off of money from the daughter of the Juju Master's
Christina.
Yeah, Christina was the Juju Mansion's master's daughter.
Who was not allowed to play
Uh-huh.
because she's a she.
Yes.
So we've got some sexism happening here. So
Even in Juju, there's sexism, my God.
so she might have been privileged in terms of being a wealthy white woman, but she was not in terms of being a woman. There was the lack of privilege there because she couldn't do what everybody else was allowed to do. So now she ends up being the last person in this family of white Juju people because everybody else was roasted. But then we get to learn a lot about Ruby and Letty's relationship, especially after she buys this house in the middle of White Street, White Avenue. And they have quite a bit of like black fun in the house. They set it up, make it nice. They have some parties, enjoy themselves. You know what happens when black people are busy enjoying themselves?
White people get mad.
What do? They come and spoil everything. So, so that's exactly what happened. There was some ghostly shit happening in the house. The police chief who was in a cult who decided to come and throw some drama in the mix. I really hated that guy. Wow, I hated that guy. I did not
like him at all. I mean, I think that same actor, he usually plays annoying characters.
Yeah, he's very good at it.
Even just seeing his face, he has like an evil face.
Yeah.
But then aside from that, I think there was a dance when they're trying to cleanse spirits that haven't moved on.
Yeah, they try to cleanse the spirits. Yeah, you're right. I don't know what they call it. Yeah, because of the other ghostly things that were happening in the house. Yeah. And then they do some juju with some blood with this time bringing in a black person, a black woman with her African voodoo or whatever juju, and they put some like protection spells around the house, which was really cool to see, protecting them against the white people. But that was one juju heavy episode. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then we learned some things as well about Montrose and how he was a bad father to Tick. So this is Tick's dad. Well, who we thought was Tick's dad.
Haha.
Wasn't really good to Tick, and we learned a lot of things about him. He's doing some shady shit. Doing some really shady shit. But again, let's go back to the fact that George is dead. And who doesn't know what happened to him? Hippolyta. Hippolyta doesn't even...
His wife.
Yeah, they bring him back with a bullet in his side. And I guess the story they pretend is that they got attacked by police, which they did. But that was not the reason why he died. And she knows something is wrong. She knows she's not being told the full truth. Which is, it was sad to, kind of watch it.
Which led on to the next episode where she's trying to figure out what happened to her husband.
Yeah.
She wants to find the truth. So she goes on another road trip. Back to this place.
Yeah, so there's some adventures here. They go under this house. There's a lot of water. The house connected to a Boston Museum of History or something like that, which is also quite amusing. I was like, wow, you guys are conveniently... Your house is the house you've bought that belongs to, well, whoever this shady white person was, is connected to this museum, and there's some more white juju and some water and mystery elevator that takes you under some water. There was lots of water in that episode. There was a lot of water in that episode.
I know. I found myself trying to hold my breath during the episode. You know, when Letty had to go back and retrieve the scroll and these guys were waiting in the elevator, I was holding my breath. I'm like, this is not physically possible. Because I used to be a swimmer. And the longest I could hold my breath for was 2 minutes. Yeah. And I'm like, no, these guys are lying.
Yeah, my best time's also about 2 minutes. So yeah, I was just like, y'all can't be Olympic level
Apparently,
swimmers.
at some point, I heard Obama can hold it for almost 8 minutes.
Wow. Okay, Uncle
I know.
Obama.
Random fact. Yeah.
Okay, there's your random fact for the day. But anyway, something interesting that happens in this episode, I think that a lot of people really liked, was this representation. Okay, they brought in a dual spirit, as in, I think had a male and female spirit person called Yahima, who was I think like a Arawak person trapped under this house and was gonna help them with this book of names that they were supposed to be able to translate or something like that.
I think she was the guardian of the scroll initially.
Do you say she or they? Because what is the pronouns of a dual spirit, gender fluidity kind of brought in here, and also representing like native peoples, which is really nice to see. Although it kind of felt, to me, it felt a little bit stereotypical. But I understand that they were like trying to bring in like a historical person, not someone from present day. But it was really nice to see. That was really cool.
Yeah. And I think it was also a nice portrayal of gender fluidity when you start to think about it.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the scene, And sorry to be visual here, but then Yahima had both parts. She had parts of a woman and parts of a man.
They had. But again, girl, nobody asked Yahima what their pronouns were, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So we can just safely assume both? Maybe
yes,
both
I'm just assuming because Yahima seems like a very feminine name, so I think that's why I keep reverting to the feminine referral.
So Yahima was supposed to help them with the book, and they rescued Yahima, got Yahima out of the watery section into the elevator safely. There was some funny spell where Yahima couldn't speak, and then Tick wanted to teach them how to speak English or something like that. No? Yahima was supposed to help them. This was the plan. But then guess who decides to just do his own thing? Who decides for whatever his own reasons are.
Montrose.
Montrose. I was just like, Montrose, I don't see, there's no scene where you show up on them. Even though we understand he's got a sad story, we understand why he's the way he is. There's a lot of the time I'm just like, dude, you're just so disappointing. At no point have you decided I'm gonna do the right thing this time. No, he just doesn't do the right thing, ever.
And at that point in the series, they hadn't really told us about his story. So we didn't really know why he was doing what he was doing. All we saw was bad father who's basically out for his own interests.
Yeah. He didn't want them to get involved with Juju.
Yeah.
Out of fear. So, I mean, some interesting stuff that happens is at this point, Ruby ends up meeting the blonde, pale, Aryan person called William. I say person because William is later revealed to be Christina in someone else's body. And they do the deed. Which takes us into episode 5, where Ruby wakes up in William the Blonde's house.
Yes.
And they have some interesting dialogues around like, oh, we did the thing. Am I just some slut to you? You know, because there's the whole view of, you know, black women being seen as just, I guess, pieces of meat for white men to...
Yeah.
So those some interesting conversations there. And then she gets this potion that lets her live life as a white woman in the world, which I thought this was very, very interesting to me. And
it was so cool.
So, because I think as a black person, there's this whole idea that in a world where there's no racism and there's no isms, what does that look like? What's that experience like? So, one way you could make that happen is if you were able to live as a white person, what would that experience be like? So this points to her. She's got dreams. She wanted to work in the store. She was qualified. She even saw some other black girl get a job, but for some reason Ruby didn't get a job there. She just wants to sell people, so I don't know, some perfumes or some shit. So it's a department store and she wants this job. But then she's like, okay, I've got this potion, I can live as a white woman. And then she actually goes there and she tries to get the job, which she does. And then she actually ends up being the supervisor of the black girl.
During her interview, she's offered the role of manager as a white woman, and that hit me hard.
Yes.
She was just trying to go as an employee, and they just made her manager without just like that.
So as this black woman, she can't get a job at all, but then as a white woman, she gets she's offered the manager's position. So I know a lot of black people can relate to that kind of thing, where you just see your white colleagues rise up, your white colleagues respected, your white colleagues supported, but you're just kind of left there. And the worst thing is when you do try to help yourself or you do something, the credit is given to someone else. I mean, yeah, a lot of us can relate to this, as I was saying. You know, it's interesting what she does with it. She goes out there and there's a scene where she's walking the street and she's used to moving out of the way for white people. But then she realized she doesn't have to do that. And people, you know, make room for her, which is really nice. And she's able to live with freedom. She goes around, does whatever she wants. I think she got some ice cream or something like that. Just like these little things.
She had a lovely day.
She had a lovely day. And it was just like, I guess as a black person, you look at that and you're just like, wow, how nice. It must be nice.
I must say, I really liked the white actress who played, you know, Ruby as a white person.
Yeah.
She was good. That was convincing.
She was very good. I have to say, I still thought it was Ruby.
Yeah, me too.
Ruby.
Yeah, it was still the same person, but I'm like, damn, this woman is good.
And not to, you know, say anything mean about her, but it was interesting how her appearance was, because I didn't feel appearance-wise when I looked at Ruby as a black woman, she's like, oh my gosh, she's so stunning. But then this woman was, you know, kind of like a normal-looking white lady. She was not like an exceptional
but she captured
beauty.
Ruby's essence.
No, she got her spirit, but it was just interesting that this woman, Ruby will walk around as a stunning black woman, and even that wouldn't allow her a lot of privileges in life. But then this woman would walk around as just a regular white lady. Nothing wrong with being a regular white lady at all, but it was interesting how she got so much out of her day. She got such a nice day. It was so nice to just do regular shit. And a lot of the time, this is all Black people want, is they just want the freedom to be regular. and also to be exceptional if they so wish. But it's just not the case in our current world. Even in majority Black places, there's still a lot of issues around being Black. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
But then based on that, if you were ever given the option to, would you choose to be white?
If I was given the option to now, knowing what I know, or option two as, hey, grab Black or white on your way into the planet Earth.
Give me both. Give me both.
I mean,
situations.
if you don't know what the situation is, it's 50-50.
Yeah.
I think knowing what I know now, would I choose to? It's a difficult question to answer because I think there's a lot of great things in terms of Blackness and Black culture and really our beauty as well that I really appreciate and I really love and I enjoy. But at the same time, when I look at the challenges that you have in life, I'm just like, is it really worth it? I don't know, man, because sometimes I just want to have a regular day and not have anyone use my appearance, the things that I never got to choose, against me for the sake of, I don't know what they benefit from. But yeah, I don't like that. So yeah, if I were given the choice, I won't lie, it's highly tempting to just be like, okay, great. I could go through life without those particular challenges. Great, you know? I'm not saying that it's going to be an automatic, easy life. I'm just saying it's not going to be difficult because of my Blackness.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one. I think I'm on the fence, but I'll be very honest and say that there's a serious temptation there. There's a serious temptation.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, listeners, tell us, would you choose to be white? If someone gave you the opportunity, if you're a Black person living in a white space, would you take the opportunity to be Black for a day?
Or white for a day.
Sorry, white. My bad. Yeah.
And why? What would be the privilege you want to during that day? Which privilege would you like to, I don't know, experience?
Yeah. I mean, I'd really like the privilege, like in the workspace. I mean, it's difficult because white women also have some problems in the workspace due to sexism.
True.
I would like to have seen what my life would look like with what my life would look like if I was a white man in the workplace. I wonder what that would look like. I'm very curious about that. When it comes to relationships and stuff like that, I think I like being a Black woman. I think that one is like a thing for the rest of the world to sort out.
That's
not
true.
Not an issue for me.
Yeah.
I think we should take a little break at this point.
Yes.
We've got a couple, like, I feel like the most heavy or interesting episodes are going to come back. Are going to be what we talk about when we come back after the break. So stay tuned and come back. Go grab a drink. We always advise you, go lubricate. Okay, that's my advice.
It's lubricating again, hey?
Hey, yes, go lubricate.
Okay, fine.
Okay, go lubricate. Be back. Get some water.
See you guys.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Welcome back, peeps, damn. People, damn, hope you're lubricated.
Hey, that's the word. That's the word.
It is, though. People have always used that when they mean, like, drinking alcohol. You need a little lubrication so your personality can slide out.
Okay, in that sense, I get it.
That's what I'm trying to say. I am not lubricated, though, in that sense. I have been having
neither am I.
Not day drinking. But
detox.
As the sun sets in the winter here in the UK, because the sun sets early, you can drink from 4 o'clock because the sun is set.
Yeah, and to be fair, all those rules have been thrown out the window in 2020. Come on, it's like people are in lockdown, man.
I really wish we would all stop the world at the same time and just say, hey guys, we've got a few months left. Should we just decide what 2021 should look like? Because we don't really like what 2020 has been. How can we collectively decide to leave some things in the past? For example, being judgmental about drinking during the day. No, to be honest, alcoholism is a real problem. All right, let's get back into it. So we left you guys at episode 5 for Lovecraft Country. We're talking about whether or not you would choose to be white? Really good question. I feel like the way the world is, I do have my days where I'm just like, yeah, today will be a nice day to be white.
To be right?
Yeah.
But, personally, I thought of the same thing. And would I? I don't know. I don't think so, actually. Because I just feel like even my soul is a black person.
Okay.
Right? I'm just blackety black.
Like Adele. I'm joking. Alright, so should we get back straight into episode 6?
Yes, let's go.
Episode 6 is very interesting and very different. At this point, we actually go back in time a little bit to see Tik. So Tik, in the beginning of the season, has come back from the Korean War. And then we go back to the time when he got there, and we're introduced to Jaya, who's this Korean lady that he eventually falls in love with. And they have a relationship. So yeah, we meet Tik and Jaya in the Korean War. So this episode was interesting. In very many ways.
I loved it. I really loved it.
I really loved the idea that we were out of where we had been, like physically, like in a completely different country, different people. And that's the thing. I always say, like, I'm not just one of those people who's like, oh, diversity. I want to see diversity on screen, meaning I just want to see black people. No. I literally mean I want to see them all. I want to see all the things.
Everybody.
I want to see everybody. I do. I mean, like, I'm just curious about humans in general. And I think my experience in life has taught me that we've got a lot more in common than not, so I don't see the issue. So yeah.
In this episode, we got to meet Jaya, who's Korean.
This was interesting. So something about this episode is that they're in Korea. Tik has been drafted into the army, like a lot of black people happens to be. It's like one of the few places where, as a black person, you get some respect from white Americans. I'm talking about Americans specifically, where they really love the military. But you'll get a little bit of respect for being a veteran if you go into war, because you're a patriot, even though you're black. But like a little bit, like it's not enough. It's just a little bit. So there's like a status to being a veteran that they get. But when he goes to America, this is the Korean War. America was occupying Korea. It was interesting to see how the Koreans themselves felt about this occupation and felt about why the Americans were there. The Americans were there, anti-communism and all that kind of stuff. Which they still seem to be till today. America has a very interesting relationship with the word communism, as if it's a bad thing. May no one label me a communist. I'm just saying, we need to know what these words mean before we outright reject them, which is, I think, the problem that America has, and most of the world in general, anti-communism, because there's no country in the world that has ever been actually properly communist. If you know what communism is, all of them have had some element of some other thing going on. There's not been any real communism.
The way we've been taught, when you think of communism, you think, oh my God, Hitler, Russia, China, oh my God, be scared.
Yeah, Vietnam, etc. But yeah, I mean, it's good to really understand what that is. But anyway, so in this episode, there's Koreans who are commies and those who are not. And there's a scene where, Tik murders Jaya's friend.
Yeah.
At this point, they're not in a relationship, but he does that because she admits to being a communist.
Yeah, and he's a soldier following orders.
Yeah, he's a soldier following orders, but it is also an interesting thing to see how an oppressed group, as in the black Americans, drafted into this war, which is, imperialist interests, how they end up oppressing other people. So it's like, oppressed can oppress. We know this. The thing is, with black people, you know this. You can see how other oppressed groups oppress us. You can see how us black people, we can also oppress other groups of people, right? Like the way black people in general, especially in Africa, how they look at the LGBTQ community as a whole. There's a lot of othering there and oppression. So so I like that they were like, look, oppression is not just like, it's not that you can fall into the camp, cleanly into the camp of I'm oppressed versus oppressor. You can be both an oppressor and oppressed at the same time.
Yeah, I like that.
Because sometimes people who are oppressed don't see how they're oppressing others, and they don't see how, at the end of the day, you're literally the same. You're both oppressed, maybe by different groups or sometimes the same, but you're not actually seeing that actually we have got something really big in common. rather than that they continue to oppress. And speaking to the patriarchs, the people who went to patriarchy, rather, speaking to those specifically, where like, black men, you're racist, and then you go home and then you become
what we were talking about Hoteps. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
In our Hotep episode, please have a listen to that. It's very interesting that you know, because in the world you're oppressed, so you come home and you oppress other people, like that kind of bullshit. So I really love that they brought this dynamic into the conversation. I don't think they brought it out. Well, it wasn't specifically like explicitly mentioned, but you know, I think that's what they were trying to say, because that's what I saw when I watched the episode. I was like, I can see the oppressed playing the oppressor in this particular situation. So yeah. But anyway, let's continue with Tik and his relationship with Jaya. What did you think about their relationship? But tell us a little bit about Jaya's story, because her story ends up being really big or critical towards the end. Yeah. Okay, so let me, set the scene for their story together. And I think theirs is a very cliche war romance story of soldier meets nurse who nurses him back to health, and he ends up maybe falling in love with her, blah, blah, blah. But then there's also different dimensions, because Jaya has been keeping this deep, dark secret all her life. And the custodian of that secret is her mother, who I think had gone through some kind of trauma early in her life. Well, both of them did. It was a connected trauma. So basically it was Jaya's dad would molest Jaya. Wow. The mom discovered this. Yeah, so the mom ended up, now this is where we go international with our juju, and you find that now we're talking about Korean juju. So the mom summoned some sort of spirit. She went to a shaman and then got... Yeah, shaman, yeah. She went to a shaman. Shaman. No, me, as an African, that's how I say it. Okay, I was looking at it like, No, shaman. I'm going to a shaman. Okay, let's pronounce your A like it is capital A. No, you can say it the way you want to say it. Me, I was just saying okay. AKA Juju Master. For Juju Korea. Master. Yes, Korea for Korea. Juju Master. Korea Juju Master. Mistress, rather, to be, correct. And they ended up summoning this spirit. I think to kill the dad, they summoned some spirits that would kill the dad, and and then something ended up happening as a result. So that spirit is called a kumiho, which is a nine-tailed fox spirit. And there's obviously, if anyone's been watching their sci-fi, horror, and, magic-related shows and whatever, you know that with any kind of magic, there's always a price to pay. So her price to pay to become human again as a kumiho was to kill 100 men. So before meeting Tik, she had got to number 99. And then Tik was supposed to be number 100. And then she'd be free of this. Yes, and then she'd be free. But the woman went and fell in love with him. Not only that, when they did the deed, because that's when she starts killing the person and whatever, she sees their memories. And I think also like maybe what their life could have been. I'm not really sure. But but she couldn't see Tik's, and she was like, hold on. And then Tik, I think when she was like, what's going on here? She did see his future, but it wasn't. Yeah, she did, but then it wasn't him being killed by her. Oh, so she's like, that's why she knew. She's wrong. Like, wait, this guy even survives me? Hold up, wait a minute. You know? Yep, and then Tik is like, whoa, I am not about to die here. A nine-tailed fox, bitch, I'm out. He ran out of there naked. He booked out of the place as quickly as he could. You know? And her mother was disappointed that you haven't had your 100th man, whatever the case may be. Anyway, so this was a very interesting story, and I really liked seeing that. It was, the dynamics between her and her mother as well. I feel like there's a whole, parents were really tough on their kids, even though this was like a very weird situation, and also in denial about what the father does, because Africans, we do hear about, we all have this uncle. Everybody has that uncle. Sometimes it's the dad who's a molester and known to be a molester, and people just like protect them, or like it's a hush kind of open secret that someone is. But it was interesting to see that perspective, and there's a lot to relate to, and it was nice for us to see really see them. But I think let's move on to like episode 7, which is my favorite episode.
Me too. Oh my god.
Let me tell you, this. I was just like, you know what? All the other shit that has happened, because the show isn't perfect. Like everything else, I feel like this episode made up for everything.
Yeah, everything.
It made up
Me
for
too.
everything.
Me too.
So we basically, if you're into sci-fi and if you like black women, this episode was made for you. Is
Amen.
Stella.
Amen. Hallelujah.
So this is the episode where Hippolyta is like, I am gonna find out what the fuck happened to my man. And I think she finds what's it called, an orrery? I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. That actually Letty was looking for in that house that they bought. So she finds this thing.
Can you describe the orrery to our listeners?
It's basically like a model of the solar system or something like that,
and all the planets and how they rotate,
and how they move. So she tries to figure out, because it's not working right, she tries to figure out through a few episodes, she's trying to figure out how to make it work, and then she does figure out how to make it work, and then she gets coordinates out of it, uses these coordinates to end up to find some. She finds some observatory somewhere, and there's a machine in there, and it's like a time machine or something.
Hold up, you're talking about coordinates but not the key. She found a key.
Yeah, there was also there was the key. Yes.
Yeah, because the orrery turned out to be some sort of puzzle that needed to be solved to unlock the key.
Yep, and she's smart. Hippolyta is the smartest person in the show.
I love her.
I'm talking smart. Super smart. We'll come back to this in a second. And then she space and time travels with this machine that she finds, where she uses the key, and she finds the place via the coordinates, and then she uses the key to figure out how to make it work. She jumps into the damn thing. She ends up in some weird sci-fi movie. And then there's this black woman with a massive afro in this spacesuit who she meets. And who, to me, I've been trying to remember for so long, like, who does this woman remind me of? I know who she reminds me of. She reminds me of Garnet from Steven Universe. Now, if you watch Steven Universe, or if you just Google Garnet Steven Universe, you're like, bloody hell, it's her, because they have the same shape afro, you know?
I do agree. I do.
Like,
she does look like Garnet.
And huge. And I was just like, so this very futuristic woman who my assumption was like, is this God or something? Because like the episode was called I Am. But anyway, it was really, really cool. So yeah, she basically ends up in this weird spaceship. And she's got like on her wrist, she's got like some weird stuff happening and some kind of technology or something embedded into her. And then I think her and that lady have a dialogue, and she tries to escape, and that lady kind of like pushes her back, and she's like, "Bitch, you ain't no prisoner."
You know, because she was acting like a prisoner. She was like struggling, like what do I do? How do I get out of this prison? What do I need to do?
Yeah.
But
meanwhile, it's not a prison. Yeah,
it's not. Yeah. It's not.
Yeah.
And I really liked that analogy, because, you know, like, we're going to explain more, but the prison she was actually in was in her own mind. If you think about it. So she wasn't in a physical prison like she thought she was, you know, trying to break down the door, knocking at things, open for me, let me out. But they're like, no, you're not in a prison.
Yeah. So she figures out how to escape or whatever from this space, and she travels to Paris, way back, and she joins Lady Josephine Baker. So she's like a showgirl, dancing. She literally like jumps into the scene where they're about to get on the show, ends up joining the showgirl line, and she tries to dance with them, and she's fucking up because she obviously doesn't know the choreography.
Yeah.
And the girls are like, bitch, what are you doing? But then she meets Josephine Baker, who's lovely to her. She learns how to do the thing, and she stays there for some time. And she really enjoys herself. She realizes, oh my gosh, I was just like here to learn some stuff. So she's learned her... go on.
Yeah. So she learned her stuff with Josephine Baker, but I think for me, what was more interesting was the next trip she took after that.
Yes, so cool. This is so cool. So, I mean, there's some other stuff happening in the episode, but I'm like, girl, that's not important. The most important thing is the Hippolyta.
Right now, you know?
So she basically, I think she was like yelling, I am Hippolyta, or something. Which I think is also the name of some Greek person. I don't know, Greek mythology
goddess
character.
Or something, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, she gets good at this thing. She masters this whole scenario, I guess, and then she levels up. She ends up being transported to somewhere in Africa, and as a female warrior, and she's basically trained to kick some ass. These scenes were so dope. They were really, really, really dope. It's just women.
Dope.
Yeah, I think it must have been based on those warriors in Benin. I don't know what they're called, but there's like a particular tribe where like the women warriors, and we got some invasion coming soon, as per the usual people who invade. You know who I'm talking about? But yeah, she basically learns how to kick ass. She gets her ass whooped, but then eventually she learns. So at the end, they
go to battle.
Yeah, they
with
go
the
to battle.
Colonizers, and they whoop us.
Yeah, I mean, but then there's a much bigger group of colonizers coming. But then at this point, she decides to level up to the next place she goes, space and time travel she does. And this time she chooses to go and spend some time with George, her husband, who's dead. And this was really, really such a great scene, where she opened up. What do you remember about that scenario?
So I remember her, like, you know, talking to her husband, and okay, so this is the part where we go back to talking about her being a geek, you know, because it seems like from the show, her and her husband shared a lot of passion for astronomy and, you know, figuring out the stars and that sort of thing. But since they'd gotten married, her husband was the one who was doing the work. You know, he'd go do his research, take notes, and then maybe she'll write an article about it. And she wrote some good articles, and her husband gave her props for that. But she was never really able to go out on the field. And her husband kept stopping her from going out on the field, saying, oh, it's not safe, it's not this, it's not that. So when she's visiting her husband this time, well, now deceased husband, she starts to talk about how her staying at home really belittled her as a person and belittled her potential, you know, as a discoverer. And she was just explaining that to him. And you also see him, which also I appreciated, you see him also come to the realization that he's been instrument to making her, or not allowing her to fulfill her potential, and actually just quietening her or silencing her abilities, you know. So it comes to that, and once she's had that release and she's had that talk with him, then she's able to actually say, you know what, I'm gonna identify myself as me. And that was one of my favorite scenes, I choose me kind of thing. And, you know, we talked about, you know, she had now developed the ability to name herself, and she ended up naming herself, a discoverer, which she had always been.
There's a part there that I thought was really interesting, where she talks about how when she was a child, she won a competition to name a comet, but the credit wasn't given to her. Instead, it went to like some Swedish girl, because they didn't want a black girl to be the face of the competition, because she won the competition. So I think it was a scene where she was pointing to the sky and telling her daughter Diana, hey, I named that comet, but you know, they wouldn't let me have it. But so we know that for a long time she's been someone who has amazing potential, astronomer, very intelligent, but never was given the chance. And it is one of those things where a lot of the time, I mean, I think I've spoken about this in previous episodes. This is the thing about any kind of oppression, is that it's not just that you're oppressing a person, you're oppressing whatever potential that person could fulfill. I've said it a million times. If women had been allowed to school when men were allowed to school, we wouldn't have cancer now. I'm just saying. And it's not because women are some, I don't know, magical smart, although some are. It's just that we don't have a sense of collaboration. A lot of the time we seem to have more sense of competition, even with the other gender. You know? Rather than collaboration, where honestly, collaborating, we'd be able to beat a lot of these things. We'd be able to be flying up to space and occupying our second planet. But now, it's all the potential that is lost from every single human being that has never been given the chance to really live up to it.
And I hate to paraphrase a quote from someone I shouldn't be paraphrasing, but or whatever. This was from a speech Bill Gates gave back in the day when he went to Saudi Arabia.
I like this dude. Why everybody know like Bill Gates?
Let's go. That's
Bill
another
Gates.
episode. That's another episode.
Bill Gates.
But
I like you. You have one
give me
fan
money,
left. You have one fan left. Don't fuck it up.
No, but then let me tell you, okay, because I'm not here to trash him or diss him or roast him.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is he'd actually had taken a trip to Saudi Arabia, and he was giving a talk. And I think we can all, we know about, the Saudi Arabia and how it treats women, that sort of thing as a country. So in his talk, someone asked him a question, and they said, what can we do to make our country develop faster? And he said, well, then you have to stop oppressing 50% of your citizens in order to succeed, because that is silenced potential. That's dampened potential.
Yeah. I mean, this year, how many women won Nobel Prizes in chemistry? Even though I'd say this particular win this year was controversial, it's the one about DNA, editing DNA. The reason why it's controversial is one of those types of things that okay, it's great a human being learned how to do this and figure this out. I've been following this story for a few years, but it's also the fact that there's a lot in science. There's a question of just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, because what usually happens, some fucking idiot, which is there's some people in China, for example, who is doing gene editing and it's not regulated, and we have no idea what the result of that would be. I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I'm not gonna come up with conspiracies. Yeah. But again, anyway, never mind. That is a whole other tangent.
That is, I don't want to go far into it because I have a lot to say.
We should have an episode on that, right?
Oh, we should. Because, girl, I have so much.
But anyway, I feel like this was a great episode.
I'm really enjoying doing this review for the show.
Me too.
So, just so people can have a chance to properly lubricate, catch some sleep, 8 hours of sleep, and revive their energy a little bit, and then come back next week and listen to this, to part 2. So join us for part 2 of this Lovecraft Country, not really review, but more like discussion about how it relates to
it life. Gets deep. It's really deep.
It's very it's so much fun as well. So join us next episode for part 2. Bye.
It's really about unfulfilled potential, and then how Hippolyta decides, okay, I'm gonna go and discover stuff